Hey everyone, welcome to the Fourth Page Podcast. I'm Danny Jones of Singing News. My guest today, someone who has literally grown up in the world of Southern gospel music. You know his family, and you know him very well too. I'm referring to Mike Hopper. Mike, we're glad you are here today.
Thank you, Danny. Glad to be here.
Big things in store for the Hoppers. They are nearing a big milestone. It's called the 65th anniversary of the Hoppers. So let's just go ahead and talk about it now. What are you going to do to pull all of the great things together to honor such a legacy?
Well, I was asked the same question on the 50th and at the 60th, and it just evolves. I mean, we're talking about some special events next year to celebrate, Mom and Dad, the group, 65 years. And it's going to be a lot of fun. I enjoy doing that, the production end of it. A lot of the video, we have so much archive video that it's sitting down and going through that and saying, okay, now for this time, this will work. We've used this quite a bit, so we need to maybe give that a rest. And it's the whole process of figuring out what you want to use and then placing it in the concert in the right place, because it's got to make sense with the song. I'm talking about the visual, if you want to do that. And but all that kind of process I love. And we went into the studio over the last 2 years, and we've recorded about 35 tunes, some of them brand new, and some we did updated tracks on favorites just for 65 years. And songs like, for that instance, we did a new track on Here I Am, which is the same flavor, but it's updated. Mm-hmm. We did a really fun track on When I Crossed to the Other Side of Jordan that my dad sang in the 70s. And we've got a new track on that. That'll be fun. That'll be a fun stage song.
Yeah, you referred to Here I Am. That was 1990, I think. It was the first number one song for the group. And to me, that surprised me just a little bit, because even, that long ago, the Hoppers were well established. And for some reason, when that song went number one, it stunned me that was the first number one for the Hoppers.
Yeah.
But the Hoppers have always had a knack for two things. One, finding great original material. And then number two, somewhat similar to what you're alluding to now, taking songs from the past, giving them an update, and making it work. Stepping on the Clouds. I've Come Too Far to Look Back. I mean, there's some classics. You guys have made classic times two or times three.
Yeah.
Where did that start?
With Mom. Mom, she has a knack for that, and hearing the classic song that she wants us to do, and then we get into the room, well, like with Shouting Time, she said, we need to do this. And back in the 70s, the Hopper Brothers and Connie, and of course the Inspirations did it, and a lot of different groups did it. But going in and adding what we do to it, the Hopper mix to it, to revamp it and give it that whole, different feel, but also just that extra bump to it. But Mom has always been good about picking those songs from the past and, hey, let's bring this up. And okay, I've Come Too Far. We went in and tracked it. We had it ready to go and mix, and the record company at that time said, we don't want to put that song on this CD. Let's not put it on there. So we thought, okay. So we kept it in the can for about a year and a half and released another project of our own and put it on there, and it went to number one, And it's stuff like that I think the mixture of things and the timing of when it's released has a lot to do with it, but that's kind of the formula.
Well, there's also a certain element of comfort. Our demographics include a lot of people who are very seasoned in life. So they remember those songs that they enjoyed 20, 30 years ago, however long. So when they see that familiar title come back across, instantly, you've already got their attention. Before we leave the thought of Shouting Time in Heaven, did anyone predict within your group or feel as though that song would have the impact that it has had since you re-released it?
I don't think so. Not at the time. I mean, it was before it gained the momentum. We staged it, and it always went over. I mean, everybody loved that. And we actually, at one of the Gaither tapings at the studio, we recorded it before the Georgia Dome, and we cut it, and it just went over big in the room. And then, but that's when Bill said, "Can you come to the Georgia Dome and do it there?" And the studio release, it was never released. The studio cut was never released.
Right. Yeah, it hit big in Atlanta there at the Dome, and the old saying, "The rest is history," certainly applies in this case. The songs that are new, though, just as equally successful and powerful. Jerusalem, great song. Where did that song come from?
Paula Stavanovich wrote it, and she actually sent it to Kim for a solo project Kim was working on at the time. And Kim brought it to the group because she didn't think that it was a solo song. And so then our producer, Larry Goss, heard it and worked his magic, and only the way Larry Goss could do it. Just a great arranger, a great producer. And he took it and took it to that level in the arrangement, the orchestration. But yeah, that's where it came from. And Paula, she also wrote Yahweh, which has been a very good song for us that we still stage both of those today. There's certain songs, and it's a good problem. I say that, but sometimes it's hard for us in a 35 or 40-minute set. You're on a concert. There's 3 or 4 other artists. It's hard for us to get in new stuff because we know they're expecting these songs.
Right.
And my mother has always been a big component in talking about the lineup and what we should do, and we can't not sing those songs. Okay, that's what they're expecting to hear. If you come in and you sing, a new songs, that's good. We've been trying to do that, and we do that. We got a brand new single out, "Can You See the Clock," and we stage that every night. But you got to sing what they came to hear.
That's right. And "Can You See the Clock?" There's another song from the past that's making a little bit of a return. Before we move on to Mike Hopper individually, let's talk about your mom and dad. How's your mom doing?
Mom's doing good. She's doing really good. She's been out with us probably 5, 6 times since the surgery in February, and she's home, healing, recuperating. Since that occurred in February, I moved back to the farm, and I stay there with her when we're not on the road. I'm there every night. Love it. Breakfast is our time. Also, from 7 to 8 in the evening, Wheel of Fortune, Jeopardy.
Some things never change.
Oh, my mom. And so, that's our time. Yeah. We go, and then in the mornings, we'll get up, and she likes, I'll cook her a fried egg on toast with mayonnaise. That's her morning sandwich. And we sit there, coffee, and it's all good. So she's doing better. She is. Dad, man, you can't keep Dad down. He's
most energetic person I've ever known in my life. He's always into something.
Always, either on the road or at home, he's got his rounds that he makes, his friends, one of his best friends there, he's also a farmer, and so they're just running buddies. They got these certain places they eat every day for lunch and for dinner, and he's always buying and selling cattle, and just always something going on, but it's always been like that.
Right.
I've never known Dad any other way.
He really doesn't have any downtime. You know, he's always, like I said, he's always doing something. And what a lot of people don't realize, yes, he's taking care of business. Yeah, we know that. But the fact of the matter is, he's not only trying to promote the Hoppers or something that the group is doing, he is genuinely pushing hard for the overall benefit of gospel music.
Absolutely.
To give you an example, a lot of the calls or texts that he will send me rarely has anything to do with the Hoppers. It's more industry oriented. It's something about what can we do to help this segment or something like that. And speaking of that, he when Claude Hopper learned to text, that created a monster.
Look out.
It did. It did.
And I bet you received those texts somewhere between 10 p.m. and maybe 2 a.m.
Pretty much.
Yeah, he's a night owl.
He is.
You know, some people don't know that, but he is a night owl. And he, once we come off stage from a concert, we get on the bus, we're on the road 10, 11 p.m., man, the wheels are turning.
Mm-hmm.
And he's back there thinking of things, like you said, the betterment of gospel music, the betterment of the whole industry, groups. How can we make this better and move this along and help people?
Right.
That's always been his big thing is, and he sang the song, "If I Can Help Somebody." That is Dad's testimony.
And he truly means it. And you look at the things that he's helped create, the Hopper Foundation. He's such a big advocate of the National Quartet Convention, and certainly one of its biggest cheerleaders and promoters out on the concert trail. So between your mom and your dad, who is Mike Hopper most like?
Depends on who you ask.
I'm asking you.
I think I've got traits of both. You know, mom's, and I'm not taking one away from the other one.
Sure.
I described this,
Sure.
okay? But the love and caring and mom's heart. I think I have that. But then on my dad's side, he's always been loving and caring but my dad, growing up, and I don't say this in a negative way, he was my father. He wasn't my friend necessarily. And there's a difference. I'm not saying he wasn't kind or anything like that, but he was my father, and he taught Dean and I both early on the ways of business and you know, how it needs to be conducted, and it was always like that around him. We didn't go to ball games, and I think he took me. I think we went fishing together one time, but now, mind you, when I was a kid, they were always on the road.
Right.
See, they've been traveling since I was born. I mean, they started full time in 1970, so. But it's always been more about business, economics, taking care of business, doing things the right way, and I'm thankful for that. You know, because he's. I'll tell this story, and I don't know, you may use this or not, but my very first car, we bought it from a gentleman in Atlanta. He worked for American Honda, and so it was brand new, and I was so excited. And we got it home, and he said, "Okay, now we're going to go to the bank." And he was friends with the president of the bank at that time, so we went in his office. And he said, Dad said, "Now I'm going to be the bank, but you're going to be set up like you have drawn the loan from this bank, from this man." And so he went back then, it was those adding machines, and he did all this thing and all this ticker tape, all was rolling out for 4 or 5 years and interest and all that. And he said, "This is what you're going to pay. This is the interest. I'm the bank, and you can't be late." And, you know, it's like, I'm thankful for that now. You know, it's just, it's things like that. And I'm not knocking anybody and how things are, but I don't think that there's a lot of parents that are friends, but maybe they're not parents. And sometimes that can get tricky,
Right. To get through life, you have to take care of business,
Yeah.
and it's up to the parents to help instill that. And there, I am sure there are worse things than being a combination of Connie and Claude Hopper. I really do. All right, so let's talk about you now.
All right.
If I were to ask you, who is Mike Hopper? How would you respond?
My gosh. Um, I always tell people that my role in the family, on stage, wherever we are, and that's the big part of my life. Growing up, doing this. My job is to keep things moving forward. Whatever's going on, just keep it moving forward. And so, I don't know that that necessarily answers your question, but that's the first answer that comes to my mind.
Mm-hmm. When you were a youngster coming up in a musical family, did you have the aspirations to be a part of it, or did you want to do something else?
No, I didn't. I didn't have an interest in it. When I was young, I would go out with them sometime on a weekend. Sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But the majority of my life until I was 13, I was at home and I grew up on the farm. We lived my dad built a house on the old home place, so he literally never left home.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I grew up, and I had my grandfather, who's my dad's dad, who lived to be 100. He was one of my very best friends. I spent so much time with him growing up and learned a lot. And that's another thing. Grandparents, if kids today, if they don't have a relationship with their grandparents, that's a whole nother level that I will always cherish.
Mm-hmm.
Both sets, my
Mm-hmm.
mom's parents and my dad. But getting back to your question, I didn't. I mean, I had him. I had my dirt bike and some friends, some cousins there on the farm, and we would ride, and that was it. I went to school. I came home. I rode. I was with them. Spent time with my grandfather, and I just didn't really think about it. Now, I'll say that I liked playing drums, and my brother had a gold sparkle set of Slingerlands in the basement that he had set up down there. And so when they would go out for the weekend, I'd go down there and play. But I would not play when they're home. So they didn't know, because Dean had them down there to mess around with. We played to albums, LPs,
Mm-hmm.
and had these big monster speakers set up, and we just, and Mom's upstairs. I don't know how she dealt with that. But anyway, so when they would go out, I would play. And I think we were at a date. No, I think we were at Watermelon Park, and I was maybe 11, 12 years old. And I got on the drums and was playing during sound check, and this is when Roger Talley was with us. And he heard that, and I didn't know at the time that the conversation had come up about my Uncle Will was getting ready to retire. He was the last of the Hopper brothers, my dad's brother, that was going to retire and come off the road. And so they were talking about who would replace him. And Dean had interest. He had interest in singing, and he played bass, and he's great. And so the natural evolution of things, if he moves up now, because everybody had live bands back then, you didn't do
Right.
tracks. I mean, you just didn't do that. And so Roger heard me play, and I think that's how my name came up to, well, hey, if he's going to go up to the front, we need to talk to Mike, see if so.
So, what was your reaction when that conversation took place?
I've told this story a few times if you want to hear it.
Sure.
So, Dad came to me in the spring of that year, and he said, well, Mike, Uncle Will's retiring. Dean's going to come up to sing. What do you think about joining the family on the road to play? And I said, well, I'm not really interested in that. I don't want to do that. I mean, man, I had my dirt bike. I had my grandpa. We were having fun on the weekends. And he said, well, you know what? You just pray about it. Just pray about it, and I'll come back to you. So it was like June or July. He came back to me, and I hadn't thought about it for a second. And he said, well, have you thought about what we talked about in the spring? You know, you coming on the road playing, you know, your brother's going to move up to the front. I said, no, I don't really want to do that, Dad. That's just not something I'm interested in. And he said, well, you just pray about it. Just think about it, and I'll get back with you. So it came the fall, and it's time for the National Quartet Convention. Everybody's making their preparations. Dad comes to me the week before, and he said, son, have you really thought about what we discussed? Your brother's coming up to sing, and you coming and joining the family playing drums. And I said, Dad, I just don't think I'm interested in doing that. And he said, well, you're going. Pack your bag and get on the bus. And that was the end of it.
End of discussion.
Yeah. So, and that's how it happened. And I've been here ever since let's see, full time I started January 1983.
Wow. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
Can you picture yourself now doing anything else?
Not really. I mean, there's been things along the way that interest me, but I've been asked that too. I don't, not anything that, I don't want to say I'm on the backside of this, but for the amount of time that I've been here, I don't see anything else that would come down the pike.
Yeah, it's the old saying that runs around in the industry is once it gets in your blood, it is kind of hard for it to leave. And you've got it two ways, both from the family and, of course, now your own personal experience. So, really, what do you enjoy on your days off when you're not dealing with Hopper? The side of the Hoppers that requires the technical aspect or a recording or touring. What does Mike Hopper like to do on that day off?
Well, on the days off, meaning we're not on the bus, there's always something to do, and you know that. I mean, I'm either in the office working, you know, with Donna, who's my cousin and our secretary on Hopper business, or I'm at the studio working on tunes for stage or editing something for another project, or maybe, you know, Dean and I have a studio there on the farm, and we bring in other artists to record their projects, or I'm working on video for stage, or maybe we've shot a new DVD and I'm putting that together, which I really like doing that. I really like editing video. So, and then the next thing you know, it's Wednesday night.
Time to leave.
Or Thursday morning, and we're on the bus. I like to travel. You know, pre-COVID and over the years when I could get away, I love to travel. I love to travel, like
Internationally.
Yes, I love the Far East, South America. I've got a couple more places on the Pacific Rim I need to hit to fill my bucket list, and maybe if everything will settle down, hopefully in the next couple years with what we've dealt with for the last year or so, that I can do that. And but I like traveling. I like going to those places. The Far East and South America has, I don't know, it's fascinated me more than going to Europe and the history there, even though, you know, I wouldn't mind going to Italy and Greece. I've been to Rome once, but man, there's just so much history, I mean, in the Far East. And I love Hong Kong and all those places.
All of those places are a long way from Madison, North Carolina.
They are. I'm thankful to say I went snow skiing in the Andes in South America, and that was just breathtaking. You know, because the elevation, you're so high, you're looking down at the forest. So you ski to the tree line, so you don't have to worry about hitting anything. But I mean, you know, the Andes, it was amazing.
Wow. A lot of memories in such a young person. You know, and you came along at the right time.
I did?
Yes, you did. And here's why I say that. You came along at the right time to be able to spend quality time and a lot of quantity of time with a lot of legends, the people who really set up Southern gospel music as we know it today.
Yes.
And you're also just at the right age to be able to help carry it for several more years. Going back to those days of the legends, who were some of your favorites?
Oh man, so many, and you're right. I'm thankful that I came into this at the time, especially. I mean, when everything took off with Gaither and the homecoming, and then I was around the legends every weekend. I'm thankful for that, and I'm telling you, Jake Hess was a cheerleader every night on stage. You know, the second half would be the homecoming section, and so everybody would be on stage. Jake would always, and it's in the round, and Jake would always come and sit right in front of the drums for the second half and just sit there and just cheer me on and just the smile. And it's like, man, that meant so much to me. But I mean, he was a great cheerleader. J.D. Sumner was very kind to me. He knew that I was a big Ronnie Tutt fan who played for Elvis. I mean, I grew up playing to those albums, Aloha from Hawaii and all that. And J.D. would call me Little Tut, you know, in his way, 3 octaves down.
Of course.
In his talking. But, I mean, they were all, I mean, just very kind. And I have a lot of good memories of that and being around who I would hear Mom talk about back in the, you know, well, we worked with them in the 70s, you know, the Goodmans, and it was always every weekend was with the Goodmans and this, and then we get on the tour with Gaither, and then I'm with Howard and Vestal every weekend and getting to play with them, and so it's pretty cool experiences.
Well, since we're talking about travels, and you've alluded to a few other places you want to go, what are those places on the bucket list?
I want to go to finish the bucket list in the Pacific is Seoul, to Singapore, which we were going to the last time we were there, and we were going to go by train actually, and they had some kind of uprising between Thailand and down there, and the train was actually attacked, or so with that obviously we canceled that. But I want to go back and do that, and I want to go to Vietnam, which we were going to, but we didn't have time to get a visa to get into Vietnam, and so we couldn't on that particular trip. South America, I've been told if you like skiing in Chile, then you need to go to Argentina, Bariloche. So I want to go back and I want to ski in Bariloche.
So, just curious, how many countries have stamped your passport? Any idea?
I don't know. I got a updated, got a new passport a couple years ago, but I still got my other one that's got all the stamps. But it's a lot.
Yeah, now you're going to go home and, I wonder how many that is and start counting. Here we go. Along the way in your career in Southern gospel music, you've had a lot of great opportunities, obviously like the people we just referred to, J.D. and Jake and others. But there's got to be some other stories of memorable moments that maybe the majority of the public are never aware of, because the Hoppers have been involved in a lot of things that not just your typical concert world. You've been able to go into some different genres and work with some people that you wouldn't necessarily think about. Anybody in that list?
Well, if you're going to go there, when we were shooting the Carnegie Hall taping in New York, and I was in the hotel one afternoon, and I got a call, and they said, "Hey, can you come down to rehearsal? Paul Simon is coming over." And I was like, "Paul Simon?"
Yeah, the Paul Simon.
Said, "Yeah, can you be here in 30 minutes?" And I said, "Yeah, I think I can make that work." And so I hurried over there, and sure enough, through Jesse Dixon, who sang backup for Paul in Europe, he worked it out for Paul to come over and sing Bridge Over Troubled Waters that night at the taping at Carnegie. So we did Bridge Over Troubled Waters. I got to play at Carnegie Hall in New York, and it was like, this is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's a moment that many people will never ever have.
And it's a moment that nobody will ever see, because it was never aired, it was never released. But the ones that were there know.
Yeah. All right, I'll just ask a question. I'm brave enough. Do you actually have a copy of that somewhere?
I don't. I've asked for it, but I'm not giving up. But it's in the vault.
Somewhere, maybe somehow that'll show up on your Christmas under your Christmas tree one day.
Yeah.
That would be cool.
Yeah, it's in the vault.
That's cool. All right. So, Mike Hopper, what do you think gospel music needs right now? What would be the boost in the arm? What would be the next game changer that will help take gospel music to even more people?
I think the talent is there. We have so much talent.
Mm-hmm.
Young, coming on, this new talent. And of course, the anchors. We've lost a lot of the anchors, but they're still there. A lot of good anchors for our industry. I think it's the technology that is just where we are: streaming, uploading, downloading, watching on demand. And I don't know if this is necessarily to your point, but staying relevant on those platforms, but still doing our music the way we do it, that's going to keep us, I think, moving forward
Mm-hmm.
in the right direction. And I mean, it's here to stay, and you're going to have to just go with it. I think there's some exciting new platforms that have just come out. Singing News TV, for one, I think can be a great avenue to keep our content out there, keep it current and available to your smartphone or wherever you want to watch your program or listen to the songs. That would be my answer to that right now.
We are in a good place in the sense that, thanks to technology and all the advances, our music is actually probably in front of more people than it ever has been before.
Oh, absolutely.
And we've just got to find the way to properly take advantage of that to continue the growth and to continue the exposure. And another thing I've often wondered about, and this might actually walk hand in hand, not every young person who wants to be a part of gospel music can sing, but there are a lot of young people who can play an instrument. Do you ever see a time when the possibility of having more live bands becomes a reality, or have we entered a time when the economics and the way that things are handled is going to make that more challenging?
I think economics definitely plays a part in it, because we have some talented musicians on and off the road, and I'm thankful. When I first came on, everybody had a band.
Mm-hmm.
I would sit on the side of the stage and watch people, Bruce Droit, Tracy Richardson, John Noske, all these great drummers that I could just sit there and glean from.
Mm-hmm.
But that I've seen that over the course of time. Economics, finances, and the band is usually the first thing that gets cut. Maybe down to a keyboard player or a guitar player or something. So to answer that question, I think financially things would have to be restructured, and I don't want to get into the business end of things, but for it to make sense to bring the bands back out here. But I mean, I think it's a definite plus,
Mm-hmm.
and I love to see it. But the economics, yes, played the biggest part in the bands going away.
Yeah.
And I don't know of any other way to say that.
And I've often wondered too, has that been a drawback that even though we do have many people who want to be a part of this and are a part of this, have we let some great talent slip by simply because of all the things that you just mentioned? When you were going down your list of musicians that you used to watch from the side of the stage, was there one particular group band that you really enjoyed more than others?
And I want to add Dean to that list too, because I was watching even when he didn't realize I was watching.
He was a great player.
He was
very underrated.
Great
too.
drummer. Oh yeah, I can right away. One of my first weekends out playing full time, we played with the Goodmans. And that was Howard and Vestal had already gone on their way to just doing Howard and Vestal. So the Goodmans consisted of Rusty, Sam, Michael English, and Tanya Goodman. And they had this band. Michael Sykes was on piano, James Gordon Freese on bass, Bruce Droid on the drums, and at that time Roger Fortner was playing guitar. And we did 2 nights with them back to back, Fayetteville, North Carolina at Cumberland County, and Huntington, West Virginia at the Field House. And I thought, buddy, if this is how it's going to be every weekend, I love this.
You're in.
Oh my gosh. They were amazing players, and I was hooked.
Yeah.
I was hooked there. And I always liked the Henson Band, and I became very close with them. And they were always very kind. I mean, this young kid coming up, Tracy, was always nice. And I'll tell you another story. There was a weekend that Tracy, he wore contacts, and he got a scarred retina from that. And so I got a call one weekend, it was a Wednesday, and Kenny Henson had called me, and he knew I was a fan, and I used to tape them, like their shows. When we worked with them, I'd take a little recorder and set it up, so I just knew it front and back. And Kenny said, hey, Tracy's got this thing going on with his eye, and he's not going to be able to go out this week. Can you go play for us? And I'm 16, and this is the Hensons. And they were coming to North Carolina. They were playing Lumberton and Greenville, North Carolina. So he knew logistically if we didn't have something that I could. And I went to Dad. I said, Dad, you've got to let me do this, because we did have concerts. And he knew. He said, yeah. He said, go and do it.
Was it everything you thought it would be?
And more. Oh, it was so fun. And that was when they did all their hits, and they just started doing Soul Filling Station.
Wow.
They had just written that. And we did it for the first time in Lumberton, North Carolina at the high school. And Gold City was there. I remember that. Place was packed. Man, I hadn't thought about that in a while.
Well, see, now you're on the short list of drummers for the Hensons. With everything that's changed, especially within gospel music, but also within the Hoppers itself, you're on the front line a lot now.
Yeah.
You don't set up the drum kit a whole lot anymore, and I know you missed that. But now that you're on the front line, what is anything changed in your perspective about what's going on the platform at the time?
Keeping it moving forward.
Yeah.
I miss playing. I've got one of my drum sets set up at the studio there on the farm, so I can go play, when I want, and still do some overdub stuff at times for people. Moving up to the front was just, it was weird for a while, because I was so used to being so busy playing, and I was singing back there, and then I've got my audio, my video, all this is going on. So when I moved up front, I didn't know what to do with my hands. It was like, so I caught myself, my hands in my pocket, and just kind of, it was like, I think the first month I told somebody to ask me, I said, well, really, it's just kind of boring. There's not a whole lot going on up here, but yeah, it's different, but it's, I think it's where I need to be right now.
Yeah, it's a good place, because you're able to, help Dean. It's a very unified team effort when the Hoppers are on stage, because everybody's got their part and everything. But you're quickly becoming the air traffic controller.
Yeah.
And with everything that's going on, and there's nothing wrong with that. Every group needs that. Any memorable moments that have taken place while you've been on the front line? Oh, no, I want to change this because you're the quiet guy.
Oh boy.
All right, your most embarrassing moment since you've made it to the front line. Not necessarily happened to you, but something that just will stick out in your mind forever. Maybe hilarious, embarrassing, whatever.
Okay. Dad had a recitation, "This is my country, this is my flag," that was written for him when they performed at the Ronald Reagan's inauguration in 1981.
Okay.
So from time to time, he would break that out and do it. But it had been a really, 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 really long time since he had, and we were at a school in Texas. I can't remember the name of it, name of the town. But somebody had already contacted the office and wanted him to do, "This is my country, this is my flag." And so he kept saying, "No, I'm going to do this. We're going to do this when we get to the concert." And I said, "Well, Dad, it's been a long time." And that's before teleprompters. It's a lot of words. So we get there, and the person showed up, and they're at the table already, in Dad's ear. "You're going to do this, and this has meant so much to me, and the correlation with the inauguration, and it's a really good. It's a patriotic piece." So we get up on stage, and I'm in the back. I'm on drums, and I always usually set up right behind Dad so he and I can communicate. Most of the time that worked. And I said, "Okay." So I hit the track, and we get about a quarter of the way into it, and he starts missing some of the lines. I know it. I mean, we all know it. And the further we get into it, the further it just kind of starts going sideways. So then he turns around to me. It was like for me to give him the words, and I was giving him the words because I didn't remember the whole thing. But sometimes when you get into something, it just comes to you.
Right.
So before it was over, he had just completely was looking right at me. I was just giving him the words, and so he was doing like this, like stand up. So I ended up standing up and finishing the recitation, and he just stood off to the side, and we got done, and the people stood, and I didn't know what I was doing, and he said, "Good job, son, good job."
Hey, it worked out. It worked out. And that's what a lot of people don't realize. The people who are on stage, they're average. I mean, they're regular people. Things are going to happen that you really don't want to happen. You're going to forget words. You're going to say something that maybe doesn't come out just right. It's part of it. But everybody has to realize you just learn to roll with it and go on.
You do. You do it.
All right.
Start it and get into the next song. Just keep it moving. Keep it moving.
Some of the most important words in gospel music right now is when things are not going exactly right, is hit the track.
That's right.
So, hey, our guest today has been Mike Hopper of the Hoppers. You have been watching the Fourth Page podcast. Make sure you tune in for the next episode. We'll see you then.